circles, commuting 60, 70 miles a day one way to get out of the city, and it burns them out. You know what I mean? And once these guys retire and go home, the divorce rate goes through the roof because they only see their wives on weekends and vacations, right? Now all of a sudden this guy's been, going to the Bronx every day or Brooklyn every day for 25 years. Now he's home. Now he wants to know, why do you keep the cereal in that drawer? You know what I mean? And the wife is like, fuck you. I've been running the house down for 25 years without a peep from you, and now all of a sudden you want to know, the day-to-day operation.
Right.
Yeah, so there's in one of my books I say that a 20-year career with the New York City Police Department is like a merry-go-round. There's ups and downs, and it's fun and it's exciting, but you got to know when to get off. Because eventually, if you stay around too long, Seabiscuit's going to throw you on your head. And that gets back to pension roulette. You could get into a shooting. You could get sued. You could get seriously injured or die. You know what I mean? The toll it takes on your health. I mean, you get guys that get ulcers or, mental health problems. So it's like, after a while, you got to know when you've had enough. It's like going to a bar. It's like, do I want to walk out of here or do I want somebody to call me a cab?
Right. I'm sure there's a huge addiction problem going through a career like that after guys have been on and seen so many things.
It's funny. I forget who gave me this test. It was a while ago, but there's a personality test. And who the hell gave me this test? I forget. But anyway, I scored in this thing of a personality for a cop, and I was surprised. And they said, there's a certain, not all cops, but there's a certain personality type that gravitates for that job because they're addicted to excitement and adrenaline, which is true.
Right.
But they also said that a lot of cops get in trouble towards the tail end of their careers or after they retire because you're so addicted to the adrenaline and nothing is going to fulfill that again. You know what I mean? I've yet to find something. I play softball one night a week. I've been doing it now for 10 years. That's the closest thing of excitement I can get to getting into a car chase or chasing a bad guy, like running out of the batter's box for 10 seconds if I'm lucky enough to hit a single or a double. That's the closest thing to adrenaline rush that I have nowadays. But you got to realize that that's not good for you after a while. You know what I mean? You can't keep putting yourself in harm's way. So I think that leads to, like you said, alcoholism, or maybe sometimes cops get involved with drugs because for 20 years you're told, no, stay the fuck away from this, you're drug screened, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now all of a sudden the training wheels are taken off. No one's looking at you anymore. You can do whatever the hell you want. It's like a kid in a candy store. And that's why you'll see sometimes you're like, ex-cop involved in some kind of sting or operation. It's like, it's the adrenaline.
Right. It's got to be take a huge toll on you when you leave all that excitement. And not only just the excitement, but every day you go on, you clock on, and you never know what you're going to expect. You never know. Every call is going to be different. You can go from a regular traffic stop to a robbery to a suicide to a DOA, all in the span of about 3 hours.
Yeah, and New York City. I mean, there's 9 million people in the 5 boroughs, and I mean, I worked in busy precincts and I worked in slow precincts, and I worked in a slow precinct, and I was involved in some of the craziest shit. And it's like, I went one time on a Saturday night. It was supposed to be a cardiac, and a woman was stabbed to death in her apartment, and her son did it. And the son was there, and he was pretending that he found her after he came back, and, it was wild. Another time, I went on a domestic, and a guy decapitated his wife, and that was a slow place to work. So you're right. You never know what the call is. Just because the call says one thing, it could be totally different. You know what I mean? You never know what you're getting yourself involved in. You pull a car over and you just think, it's going to be, I'm either going to give this guy a warning or I'm going to give him a ticket, and then it just it erupts.
Right. It just goes from there. Next thing you know, you're on a 10-mile police chase and,
Or in the fight of your life. You're wrestling with somebody over a gun. And that's happened to me a couple of times where I've wrestled with people with a gun, and it's the scariest thought. I mean, when you're a kid, you get into a fight, or if, God forbid, you're an adult, you get into a fight. You're just trying to win or get away from this guy. When you're wrestling with somebody with a gun or a knife, it's the scariest thing in the world because you can't lose. There's that. It's amazing. Like, you know, like you almost get into a car accident or something scary happens to you, and like that adrenaline kicks in, and even though it's a split second, your mind just opens up, and you can think so quickly.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like you say to yourself, "How was I able to process all that in that short split second?" And when you're fighting with somebody with a weapon, and you know they're looking to hurt you, I mean, it's like, I can't lose. There's a survival. At least with me, there was a survival instinct. Like it's almost like I don't care if I get hurt. I don't care if I get a hernia. You know what I mean? It's like if I lose, game over.
Right.
You know
like
what I mean?
whatever it takes.
This person is going to take this gun and kill me. You know what I mean? Or hurt someone else. So it's amazing how that your mind just slows down when that adrenaline is pumping.
Yeah, it's like time comes to a complete stop.
Yes.
And everything, it becomes vivid. Like it's the wildest thing. I remember when I was doing security, I had to draw out on somebody, and at that moment, I could have told you every mosquito within 1,000 yards. Like everything just became super highlighted, and it was
amazing,
it's just. But then when it's over, you can't sleep for days.
You know, it's funny because people ask me a lot, do I have nightmares? I don't. You know, the only dreams I have about police work is it's like a recurring dream. There's a couple of them. But one is I know I'm retiring in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. How do I want to do this? Do I want to, you know, stop by all the places I worked and visit all the people that I'm probably not going to see again? Is my overtime where it is? You know, did I finish all my cases? I don't want to leave a mess for someone else. But I don't have like nightmares or, I mean, I was down at ground zero. I don't have nightmares about that. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know why, but it just, I mean, I get upset if it's on television, I'm watching a documentary, it's like, it bothers me. But at the same time, I don't have nightmares. It doesn't torment me.
Right. I think it just goes back to a mindset. It takes a certain individual to be able to do that level of work, because your brain also almost has to naturally compartmentalize everything. You know, and on its own, it can't be you have to do it. It has to happen. You know, and it's not for everybody. We worked with a guy who his whole life wanted to be a cop. His whole life. He went through the academy. Aced it. He was a star pupil. First night on FTO, they pulled a car over, and guy had a gun and pulled it out on him. And luckily, everything went down the way it was supposed to. But after that, the guy realized, hey, this isn't for me. I can't do this. This is not what I signed up for. And he left after that, sadly. But it's not for everybody.
No, and you're right. And sometimes, especially with rookies, something wrong will happen very early, and they're never the same again. There was a female cop that we worked with. She was right out of the academy, like a week, maybe less than a month. And they sent her down to the hospital to guard a guy that was suicidal, like at a mental health facility. So they were waiting to put him in. So there's like an observation period. And the guy wanted to use the bathroom, and she uncuffed him, and he got her gun away from her. And he's waving it around. He's waving it around in the hospital room, and he put the gun in his mouth and blew his brains out right in front of her. So it's safe to say she really didn't want to do enforcement after that. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was. She hung in there for a while. She was still a cop for a while. I don't know if she did 20, but she wasn't a go-getter, if you know what I mean. Like, she wasn't like the first one through the door, or I think it affected her.
Right. Yeah, we have a friend who got done with her training, and then about a month on her own, they get a call, and she showed up on scene. It was a domestic violence, and the guy ended up opening fire on them, and her commander was killed on the scene, and then her and her partner were both shot. And then, as soon as she started recuperating, she couldn't wait to get back out in the field. It's just some people are designed for it.
Yeah, and like you said, you compartmentalize things. It's almost like a circuit breaker. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you try not to let it get to you, and you think about something else.
Right.
If you just sit, it's like anything else. I mean, listen, we've all lost a loved one, and it crushes us for that time. But the thing is, if you let that will drag you down the drain. If you just, keep with it. I mean, you're still always going to love that person, and they've definitely left a void in your life, but you have to move on.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because if you don't, you're just going to be a basket case.
Right. So, so you did detective work in a lot of different kind of precincts, and I know you were doing auto theft. Was that fun? Was it difficult? Yeah.
No. My last 10 years, I was a detective in the auto crime division, so that was chop shops, exporting stolen vehicles out of the country, changing of vehicle identification numbers, mob run junkyards. No, it was like a 3-ring circus. In the mid-90s, the New York City was averaging 150,000 stolen vehicles a year. So it was like shooting fish in a barrel. Like, I could throw the two of you guys in a radio call with a computer and say, drive, and I'll just punch plates because I know what to look for. We're going to get a stolen car. And the auto crime division was kind of, if you ever saw the movie Heat with Al Pacino, we worked on crews. Like, we would pick off the garden variety pain-in-the-ass car thief from time to time, but we were going after the head of the snake, you know what I mean? Like, where the cars are going, why they're getting chopped, who's sending them out of the country, to put a dent in the guys that are putting in the orders for those things. And it was fun. It was exciting. That was probably the best 10 years of my career. I was always a car guy, even like when I was in uniform driving around. I was always picking off stolen cars because I liked it. It was fun. It was exciting. You know what I mean? And with a stolen car, the car is either stolen or it's not stolen. He or she was either driving it or they weren't driving it. You know what I mean? It wasn't. Right. It was pretty clean cut. And I worked in a gas station as a kid, and I worked in a neighborhood where there were a ton of car thieves, so I knew what to look for early on. Right,
you were kind of raised up into it.
I saw quite a bit, yeah. Like when I was a kid, we used to have, this is, the beginning of like the heroin and crack epidemic in New York City. You get all these kids coming into the gas station with stolen cars, with the General Motors cars with the long neck steering columns, would be broken with a towel or a bandana wrapped around it. One key in the ignition, the vent window broken. You know what I mean? Or that bullshit balloon tire when you get a flat that's supposed to be for 40 miles and they'll throw it on a car and drive it for 500. On a brand new Cadillac. You're like, why would they do? Because the car is stolen. So I knew what to look for early on in life, in that career.
Right. I gotta say, I absolutely love the title of your book, Dickheads and Debachery. That is quite honestly probably the greatest title of a book.
Somehow I knew you would.
It's like right up my alley.
In fact, I downloaded it to my Kindle right away. That's the book.
Thank you. Yeah, Dickheads and Debauchery and Other Ingenious Ways to Die. It's a comedy. It's not really. There's a couple of police stories in there, but it's basically the ridiculous things people do to shorten their life expectancy. Running with the bulls in Spain. Like, why not just ride the New York City subway? Why would you travel all the way to Spain and take your chances of getting gored by a bull? It's just the ridiculous things people do to shorten their life expectancy.
Right, like typical white people things.
Yeah,
swimming with sharks.
People that burn down their porch when they're deep frying a turkey. You know what I mean? Like things like that, not knowing what they're doing.
Right. Oh, man. So, if you could go back and change one case, does one come into mind?
Oh, I got so many, because you know what? Hindsight is 20/20, and you step back, right? And you're like, oh, I could have. I'll tell you one. I'll tell you a quick story. We had this case. I mean, this could be a book within itself. We did a case where we had Chinese nationals that were shipping 20 stolen. They were shipping between 20 and 30 stolen cars out of the country, going to Shanghai.
Right.
And so you had Chinese nationals that were running it. You had a Jamaican middleman who was putting in the orders for the cars, and then he had crews of steel guys in the Bronx that were stealing cars. The Jamaican, the middleman, got $5,000 a car. The car thieves got between $500 and $1,000. Okay, so you had that going on. That's exciting. They're stealing 30 cars a month. The cars are going to this warehouse in Brooklyn. They're getting put in shipping containers. They're getting railed to California. They're going on shipping containers. They're going to Shanghai, right? While we're up on these guys' phones, we quickly realized that a couple of guys involved in this are doing hits. They're doing murders on the side. And they're bragging about it, right? So now we got murder for hire business, right? That's a complete. I could tell another story about that that'll blow your mind. So we got that, but there was a couple of scams